It was early in May when a little girl, Wanda, was on her way walking to school, a way she had walked plenty of times before. And she walked past Main Street and First Street where she saw the empty city block, or the empty city lot that she had seen many times before. But today, something caught her attention. It was a rose bush. And Wanda thought, oh, my very own rose bush. Well, it really wasn't Wanda's rose bush because that was not her vacant lot. And it may or may not have been a rose bush to begin with. It was a bare, thorny, green thing growing up amidst junk in this vacant lot. But Wanda went on to school, and during school, she daydreamed about this rose bush. In art class, she drew pictures of roses. And when she got to the library, she asked Ms. Jones, the librarian, to help her check out a book about roses. And when she was in science class, she kept asking her teacher about roses and how to grow roses. And the teacher said, Wanda, we're talking about the stars today. Just calm down. On her way home from school, Wanda stopped at the rose garden. And she said, I'm not sure that this rose will ever bloom because it can't get enough air. There's too much junk in the way. And she started pulling away some trash out of that vacant lot. And Mrs. Turner came by pushing her baby stroller. And Mrs. Turner stopped and said, Wanda, what are you doing? And she said, I'm making space for air for my rose. And Mrs. Turner thought, well, that's a wonderful thing to do, Wanda, but I'm not so sure that that's a rose. Oh, it certainly is a rose. I just know it's a rose. And Mrs. Turner pushed on her baby stroller and said, well, good luck with that, Wanda. And thought, if that is a rose, and I'm the Queen of England. The next day after school, Wanda was back at that empty lot, that vacant lot, that dirty lot, clearing away more stuff. And Mr. Claudel was on his way home from work, and he stopped and said, Wanda, what are you doing? And she was trying to pull a great big tire out of the grass of the lot, out of the weeds and stuff, and he stopped to help her. And she told him what she was doing. I'm clearing the lot so my rose has more air to breathe. A rose? What are you talking about, Wanda? That over there. And it looked like a bare, thorny plant to Mr. Claudel. And he said, Wanda, I'm not so sure that's a rose bush. Certainly it is. And if I give it enough air, then it might bloom. It will bloom. Mr. Claudel said, I'm not so sure about that, Wanda. Trust me, Mr. Claudel. One day, it's going to be filled with sweet-smelling roses. And Mr. Claudel finished helping her a bit and then went on home from work. And he thought to himself, if that's a rose, then I am the King of France. The next week or so went by and still nothing. And Wanda would stop and clear out more junk. And Mrs. Giamatti had heard and seen about this little girl, Wanda, clearing this lot. And Mrs. Giamatti had showed up with some trash bags just to give to Wanda to let her use and said, if you need anything else, just let me know. And Wanda thanked Mrs. Giamatti for the trash bags, and she kept putting broken glass and broken toys and things into the trash bags and putting them by the road. And Mrs. Giamatti just kept watching because she had heard that Wanda was trying to create a rose garden. I don't think that's ever going to be a rose garden, Mrs. Giamatti thought. Well, finally, in school one day, Wanda asked Mrs. Jones, the librarian, how can I get roses to grow because there's nothing growing? And Mrs. Jones said, well, does it have enough sun and enough water? Because it hadn't rained lately, kind of like here. Does it have enough sun and water? That's it. And so Wanda went and started clearing some of the bigger stuff away from the rose garden, or at least from the rose. And she went down to the grocery store at the end of the block and asked Mr. Sanchez, the grocer, could she borrow some water? Because he was the closest thing nearby, and she just knew that the grocery store had water. And he said, Wanda, is that what you've been doing out there, trying to clear the lot so you can plant a rose? Oh, I'm not planting a rose. I'm growing a rose. And Mr. Sanchez looked out there, and all he saw was this bare, thorny, green plant. I'm not sure that's a Wanda. I'm sure that's a rose, Wanda. But here, have some water. And he gave her a couple of water bottles. And she took those water bottles and she poured them on the plant. Well, that plant still did not bear any roses. It was just a bare, thorny plant, a little stick thing, 2 feet tall and not much else. But the lot did look a whole lot better, a whole lot cleaner. And then Wanda had an idea. Now it was June, the month of June, and Wanda sent out an invitation to Ms. Jones, the librarian, and Mr. Claudel, and Ms. Turner, and Ms. Giamatti, and Mr. Sanchez. She sent out an invitation, and it said, "Come to my tea party at Wanda's Rose Garden at 9 o'clock on Saturday." Kind of like some of us got an invitation to show up yesterday for God's work our hands. So all 5 people got an invitation. And Ms. Jones, who had never seen the Rose Garden, because she was always in school, she got so excited. She thought, I will bring some blueberry muffins to Wanda's tea party. And I can't wait to see the rose, or the Rose Garden. But the others thought, oh my, Wanda is going to be so disappointed because there's no roses there. Oh no, what will happen when Wanda shows up on Saturday morning and there are no roses? What's going to happen? Mr. Sanchez said, heavens to Betsy, this is a catastrophe. And on Friday night, they were all busy before the Saturday morning tea party. Ms. Jones was busy making the blueberry muffins. Wanda was busy making paper roses to tie onto her rose plant. And the others were busy doing something else. And so on Saturday morning, they all show up at 9 o'clock, and they go, wow, Wanda, look at your rose. It's amazing. You have red flowers and purple and pink and black, even black roses. But they're all made out of construction paper, and they were all tied precisely to the various limbs of that little bare and thorny bush. And Ms. Jones showed up with those delicious blueberry muffins. And the others, the other participants, Mr. Claudel and Mrs. Turner, and Mr. Sanchez, they all showed up carrying rose plants in pots to plant in Wanda's Rose Garden. So they had some blueberry muffins, they drank some tea, they laughed, they talked, and then they started shoveling the holes for the roses. They all pitched in to help put dirt and good soil around those rose plants. And Mr. Sanchez supplied the water that they all poured onto the roses. And Wanda said, I told you, there was going to be roses here on my rose garden, in my rose garden. And the rest of that summer, there were the sweetest smelling roses that anyone could ever remember, especially in that empty, dirty old lot. It was wonderful. And people said that rose garden could be fit enough for the Queen of England or for the King of France. A story of hope and transformation. A story maybe of taking up a cross. A story not necessarily of death like the cross would lead to, but the story certainly of life and community and relationships and blessing what you think is dirty and broken and nasty and transforming it into something. That's what God did with God's bare and thorny stick tree. And Jesus said, take up this bare and thorny cross and carry it. And let's see who follows. And let's see how transformations occur in people's lives, in people's hearts, through people's hands, in people's communities. I mentioned that I was not much one to have a delegation of 10,000 behind me. I'd probably be one of those further back. But a wise person might even take a look and say, there's no way I can defeat 20,000. An even wiser person says, there's no way I can even I'll ever be able to defeat God. For God's grace and love and mercy keeps coming towards me and inviting me in. And the book of Colossians, wrong page. The book of Colossians reminds us of that. This one Bible verse says this: through Christ, God was pleased to reconcile to himself all things. You and me, empty lots, rose gardens, whether on earth or in heaven, by making peace through the blood of his bare and thorny cross. By making peace with us through the bare and thorny cross. Thanks be to God. Amen.